702.
Let's walk the talk on 92.7
and 106 FM.
Welcome back. It's 24 minutes before 2. This is 702 Afternoons. My name is Kgomotso Modise. I'm in for Relebogile this afternoon. So, of course, it is June. It's Youth Month. And we've been shining the spotlight on opportunities for young South Africans. Many are looking beyond traditional employment and turning to the digital economy to earn an income. Today, on our feature, we're exploring 10 tested ways to make money online, from freelancing and tutoring to content creation, digital marketing and virtual assistants. I mean, we've heard a lot of people saying, or more people exploring the idea of being a digital content creator and making money online and making an honest living online. There are opportunities to make money online, but there are also many, many scams and illegitimate platforms that people, are using to exploit the needs of others. We're going to be having that conversation. But if you have explored building a career online, how's that going for you? How were you able to find legitimate platforms, verified ways for young people or for yourself to earn money? Because in the beginning phase, you might struggle a bit and you might fall for some scams, or you might come across platforms that are there to exploit you. But I do believe, and I've heard, that once you find legitimate platforms that are, used by many and have been tried and tested, then it can really be a solid career path to follow. Erica Liebenberg is the head of comms for JustMoney, and she joins us now on the line for that conversation. Erica, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Erica, hi.
Hi.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, dropped out for a moment, but you're back.
Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's an important conversation that we're having here today, especially because so many young people spend so much time online. And you often hear people saying, you already spend so much time on your phone, on your laptop, on your iPad. You might as well look for ways to make money out of it. And there are legitimate ways to go about doing that, aren't there?
There absolutely are, and it is such an opportunity. And as you say, young people spend so much time online. I think we all do these days anyway. But, given that youth unemployment is at such a high rate, I mean, the latest stats from Statistics South Africa shows that, there's 60.9% of people aged 15 to 24 years are unemployed. It's crazy. 40.6% of those aged 25 to 34. Massive statistics. And so much of the entry-level job market is decreasing, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. But that online environment, it's a huge opportunity, so much so that a report by NASPERS is showing that the digital platform sector is expected to contribute roughly 91 billion rand to the economy by 2035, and that's going to be about 1.3% of the GDP. So massive opportunity. Now's the time to step on. We're looking at a very similar situation to the .com era where the early adopters are going to see the big long-term gains.
Yeah. I don't want to waste any time. I want us to go into some of those opportunities that you have highlighted and have identified. I mean, I come from a place where I've heard many people currently speaking about being a digital content creator. That's it's actually a buzzword currently.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
A few years ago, it was teaching online that was also very popular. And these are among some of the careers that you've highlighted, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And, digital content creation, it still remains a very high-end or high possibility, high income earning potential gig. It's important to note with that one, though, that it takes time for you to build up your content, and you've got to produce that high quality content. You've got to build up your audience. But once you've done that, your earning potential is massive. But if you want to step on, it can be even something simple like doing paid surveys. There's a lot of companies out there, universities, they're looking for people to answer short questionnaires, no investment needed. It just comes down to, your age, your location and your interests. And then you can sign up with a platform and away you go. No cash expense up front. And, you can earn anything up to 1,500 Rand a month, depending on how many platforms you sign up and how much time you can allocate to that. And then there are things like micro tasks and data labeling.
Yes.
Platforms like ClickWorker, where you can label images, you can help to train AI systems. There again, it's an easy step on point. You don't need to put any money up front. you might only earn a few $100,000 a month to start with, but your hours, if you increase your hours, you can earn anything up to $3,000 a month or more. So there's so many opportunities available, not just for those that have got the high-end skills. But if we look at high-end skills, for example, if you look at something like web development, that is a big one. The learning curve is steep, but so is the income earning potential. And particularly if you're a full stack web developer with a long-term overseas client, you can earn anything upwards of 70, 80,000 Rand per month, all online, fully remote. So the opportunities are absolutely out there.
And of course, that though would need you to do a bit of studying, right? A bit of learning.
Yes. Absolutely. You would need to be appropriately qualified. You'd need to have experience. If you're stepping on at the entry level and you've done sufficient courses or let's say even a degree, your earning potential is probably capped at about 10 to 20,000 a month initially. But you're looking at 40 to 70 upwards once you've got that experience, or once you're a full stack developer offering a whole range of services.
Yeah.
The other thing that's important to note is that developers who combine technical skills with project management or site maintenance skills, they tend to have more stable monthly incomes. And that's often the case with the online environment. If you can look at adjacent skill sets, start with something that you can do. And just about anyone, for example, can do the surveys we talked about or those micro tasks. But look at upskilling and if you do have skills to begin with, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you are formally qualified. You don't need to be. But if you've got skills, let's say, for example, in freelance writing or editing, you might have done a course, you might have a natural gift. Maybe you're a virtual assistant. Keep upskilling. That's the really crucial thing. Once you've stepped on, you've got your first client or two, keep reinvesting the money that you're making initially into upskilling, into better software, because that's just going to keep increasing your income earning potential. One of the mistakes that people tend to make in the online and remote working environment is, those first paychecks come in, it's exciting, you haven't left the comfort of your own office chair, let's say, and then there's that real temptation to invest in your lifestyle. Really, for the first few months, it's crucial not to do that. You want to keep reinvesting and making sure you're visible online. You want to make sure you're subscribing to enough platforms, that you've given examples of your work. You've got to be very active about searching for work in the online environment. So that's got to be a target to begin with.
And I wanted to ask that, how do you search for these opportunities and how do you make sure that they are legitimate? Because I am aware that many of these do require you might be required to give a lot of your personal information. You want to know that the platform is legitimate.
Absolutely. And the crucial thing is to look at reviews. Look at reviews from other users of platforms, and the platforms obviously vary significantly in terms of the kind of work you're doing. Like if, for example, you're doing tutoring and teaching, you might look at something like Teach Me Too or Preply or Tutorful. There's so many platforms out there, but look at those reviews, see what other people are saying, other freelancers are saying. And then in terms of the red flags, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because there are so many scams online. Irrespective of platforms, the red flags are usually much the same. For example, if they're asking for an upfront payment, this is a big red flag, because legitimate job or income earning opportunities, they're not going to require you to pay upfront fees to access the work or earnings. That's a big one. Guaranteed income plans. That's another one. No legitimate online income method can promise you fixed or, risk-free returns. That doesn't exist. And then big scam tactic across the board, pressure tactics and urgency. So any language that makes you feel like, if I don't sign up now, if I don't pay this money now, if I don't, whatever, it's a rush decision. It's a common scam tactic, and it's intended to make you bypass your basic checks. And you'd be amazed how often people fall for those. And the reason, of course, is, those unemployment rates, particularly among youth, they are so high. So watch out for that one. And another big one, and I've seen this a lot on social media, especially Facebook, is vague job descriptions. So, a lack of clear deliverables, or not saying what kind of industry the client's in. Now, obviously, they might not say who the client is, because then you can bypass the platform, but not even saying it's this kind of industry, and not giving any indication of payment terms. Big risk, massive risk. So watch out for that.
I'm really interested in the tutoring and teaching online, because that was very popular a few years ago. It started being very popular a couple of years ago. And what I've heard from many is that over the years, because of the the increase in people that are, coming onto the sites that are offering the services, the saturation there, the pay has gone down significantly. What does that space look like currently?
It's still a good space to be in, and I think that decline really started with COVID, because what happened was that a lot of South Africans were working, particularly in the Asian market. And, obviously with the advent of COVID, there were so many people looking for online work, and that's when the saturation really commenced. And a lot of the platforms actually started to exclude internationals altogether. And that created it worsened the situation, because obviously then the number of platforms South Africans could work for was limited, the amount of competition increased, and of course when the competition increases, your income earning potential drops. But it is still so viable. It's very viable. If you're looking at a South African platform like Teach Me To, you can still typically earn between 120 to 300 Rand an hour. It depends on your subjects that you're teaching, the level that you're teaching at, and your qualifications. But if you look at global platforms, and there are still some available, things like Preply and Tutorful, they actually allow tutors to set their own rates. Obviously you want to price competitively. You don't want to price yourself out of the market entirely, but, you're looking at anything between 15 to 25 US dollars per hour, which equates to roughly, let's say, 250 to 400 Rand per hour. So that's not too bad, but very important to note that those international platforms, they do take a commission. So you need to factor that in. But irrespective, you can look at monthly earnings that range from between, let's say, 1,500 to 8,000 Rand. It depends on the number of learners that you're teaching and the number of hours that you're teaching. And then it can go even further upwards from there. Still worth looking at, particularly because, and particularly, for people that have come out of secondary school, young people who are maybe entering varsity or maybe they're not, but they do have those skills. Those are valuable skills. And because English is such a strong language in the international market, and because the South African time zone correlates with the European time zone, for example, there's other avenues that open, things like virtual assistants. But, obviously with countries where English is not so strong, being able to teach English, that is a big feather in the hat of young South Africans, and it's still worth considering.
We're speaking to Erica Liebenberg. She's the head of comms for JustMoney, and she's talking us through legitimate and verified ways for young people to earn online. More from her after this.
Let's walk the talk.
702.
Welcome back at 7 minutes before 2. This is 702 Afternoons with me, Kgomotso Modise. I'm in for Relebogile this afternoon, and we're having a conversation around legitimate, verified ways for young people to earn online. My guest is Erica Liebenberg, and she's the head of communications for JustMoney. Erica, I wanted to ask particularly around positioning oneself for the careers that we've spoken about. Because it does sound like in most of these careers, one would have to go looking for the opportunities, doing a lot of searching for the opportunities. Is this how it works, where you must be doing a lot of Googling, a lot of searching regularly in order to get into this? Or, are people spotted for these opportunities as well?
Yeah, it's very rare, unfortunately, to be spotted unless you're looking at the higher end skill set, such as web development. But even then, it's very much about pitching yourself in the gig economy, always. And, the online gig economy especially, the amount of competition is so high because the step-on points are so low in so many respects. We've talked about the fact that young people tend to be online anyway. Everybody's connected these days. Everybody's got devices. Everybody's got internet access. We've got good high-speed internet access. So you're talking about a very saturated marketing place. But the good news is, as with anything else, consistency is key. And those who are prepared to put the effort in consistently are the ones who are going to reap dividends. And really, before you even make a start in the online economy, the crucial thing is to have a think about and audit really, in a semi-formal sense, the skills that you currently have, how you might be able to upskill quickly and the amount of time that you can commit, because that's going to determine the kind of area that you move into. Because some of the areas, and we talked about content creation a little bit, and we haven't really talked about content monetization, but that's another one that can really pay dividends. YouTube and TikToks and videos and blogging, big dividends. But again, the amount of investment that you need to put in there is huge. So, it's really about being clear about the skills that you have, the skills that you need to have, the time that you can commit, and then searching accordingly. and make use of AI. You know, insofar as so often people feel that AI has destroyed so many entry-level opportunities, and in many respects it really has. A lot of those automated functions are being given to AI now as opposed to humans. However, at the same time, you can use AI tools to determine where it is that you might best fit in. You know, it can do things like audit your LinkedIn profile in terms of, you know, you can feed it information, ask it to help you to optimize. You can sort of say where your passions are, where your skills are. You can ask what you need to do to upskill.
Yep.
And it's able to search all those databases to let you, you know, it just gives you that good start. But, you know, the principle remains the same. You know, you've got to pick that one method. Once you've decided, okay, this is the direction that I'm going to go in, don't jump about too much. Really commit to that method for at least 30 days. Have a look at whether it might work for you. Because if you're going to start spreading yourself too thin, jumping around from platform to platform, you know, maybe you're over-Googling or over-using Gemini or Chat, you know, you're jumping around, you see the next best thing. If you don't commit, you're going to dilute your efforts and you're just not going to get anywhere.
Erica Liebenberg, Head of Communications for JustMoney, thank you so much for your time.
Absolute pleasure. It was great to join you.